everybody, and welcome to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana, and I will be your host. And our guest today is Jason Sproesser. Sproesser, like Schnauzer. Sproesser. Jason Sproesser. Sorry about that, Jason.
No worries.
So welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Glad that you are here. So why don't you take a minute and tell us a little bit about you, about your company, all that kind of stuff before we get into it.
Sure. I work for a company called Helmpoint Solutions. It's a DoD and IC partner in the government space based out of Columbia, Maryland. And we do, obviously, government and force protection and cybersecurity services. In addition to that, what we offer is a commercial compliance readiness solution based on our own experiences and dealing with our own supply chain and getting them ready for CMMC.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, today we're going to talk about some of those detours for the OSCs on the compliance journey. So our first question we're going to kick off with is, what common OSCs misconception lead to compliance detours?
Sure. So it's a great question, right? Because what we see is that there is this understanding in the industry that as an OSC, I have the ability just to pay and make it go away, or I can just assign somebody to check some boxes and get my organization compliant and get me to where I need to go. Mm-hmm. And in all actuality, that's not how it goes, right? There's no chance for roles and responsibilities to be fully outsourced in this journey. Successfully tackling this journey requires an organization to actually familiarize themselves with the requirements and be able to fully identify what their responsibility is in the scenario. Another misconception that we run into a lot is that people are looking for the out-of-the-box compliance solution or the pay-to-make-it-go-away technology that's literally we're going to click and we're going to install, and all of a sudden we're going to be compliant, we're going to be good to go. And that's actually not it, right? We understand that in this process, the people are needed, right, to drive the processes, to drive the technology successfully in the implementation. And so what you see a lot of times, and what I see dealing with organizations seeking certification, is that they think that I'm going to come in, I'm going to install all this, all these technology solutions for them, and then they're going to be compliant and they can call in a C3PAO and they're going to be ready to go. No explanation, no defense of the implementation or anything like that. And that's not the case.
And that's why we got to get the word out so that people understand that this is not going to be a set it and forget it. It's going to take time. And the sooner we can let all these OSCs, this train is coming down the tracks and some of them don't even know it's coming. And like you're saying, it's not like, hey, check the box. Okay, good. Whew, we're done. Now we can move on to something else. So.
Right. And so what you also see is that you see that the smaller companies, more especially, typically have a person that's responsible for compliance that's responsible for another major role within the day-to-day operations, right? And the executives are assuming that these people can wear another hat, and realistically, the role requires almost a full-time hat and a full-time investment of your manpower hours. So then executives are kind of deciding that, like, well, do I want my HR to suffer, or do I want my business analysts to suffer, or do I want to invest into this position? And a lot of times, more often than not, people are being assigned and they're being overworked and given responsibilities, and there's a lot on the line for this. So
yeah, because they think, oh, it's just compliance. How much more work could it actually be, right? I don't think that it's an ongoing everyday thing that somebody's got to be paying attention to. So
correct.
All right, so our next question. So why is picking the right people important?
So this kind of goes back into the wearing multiple hats, right? You have to be able to assign people to roles and responsibilities that possess competencies and skills associated with the model, right? Like we have to be able to pick out the people that are able to satisfy the requirements or spearhead the effort for the organization to satisfy the requirements. But more often than not, they have no clue what the requirements are, right? Mm-hmm. And then one of the prime examples that I had is an organization which I worked with. They appointed somebody that was in the human resources department that had a familiarity with technology to be their CMMC champion. And it's a word I use a lot. And what had happened is that they were able to go through and they were checking all the boxes. Yeah, we have an incident response plan and we follow these steps. And what they didn't realize was, and what we uncovered during our engagement, was that the person that's responsible for the welfare of your organization, if in times of in trying times, in a breach, is basically the welfare of your organization is dependent on this person's ability to follow checkboxes and follow a step-by-step procedure that you laid out, with no familiarity on how to contain, how to eradicate, how to evidence control, how to manage evidence and things like that. So you can technically become compliant and not secure, right? We say that all the time. And you may be able to check the boxes and become certified, but is that going to stand the test of time when it comes down to it, right? When it's judgment day and there's an incident taking place, are you going to be able to respond appropriately? And that's one of the major issues and one of the major reasons why this entire program is being put about.
And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Taking a little bit of time right now to put some kind of proactive plan together is going to pay off. I mean, you got to think about it. If you don't have anything in place right now and all of a sudden, boom, something happens, and everyone's looking at each other. Now the tick, the time is going. Time. Okay, who are we going to call? Oh, we got to find the phone number, and it sounds silly saying it like that, but that's really what it's going to be like. So, and that's nothing good is happening during that time. So,
yeah, you'll get in a situation where you're searching through a Word document to try to figure out what step of this am I on. You haven't rehearsed it. You haven't practiced it. There's no takeaways or after actions from the practices. And so you end up in the scenario where for the first time, it's like it's a trial by fire, right? You're being put out there and it's, I hope you survive, sink or swim.
Yep. All right. So can outsource providers like MSPs cause detours?
So yes, right. We know that MSPs have the potential to be a huge bottleneck in organizations seeking certification, achieving CMMC compliance. And so with one of the scenarios that I come across often is that I have small and micro-sized businesses that have this comfort with this IT provider that fixes printers or that repairs, endpoints or that assigns accounts in Office 365 or whatever it may be. And they have that comfort level. And that's one of those values that, really is overlooked. And what happens is that with new requirements coming down to these small businesses, they're outgrowing the coverage. They're outgrowing the services that are being provided. And so one of the common detours that we run into is that we see either they fire the MSP or they terminate the relationship with the MSP, and then they're detoured to start a new relationship and to develop trust, to do discovery in the environment and to set things up. Or what's been successful also is like teaching the organization and educating the MSP that there's an alternate way to go about it, right? You can find a larger organization, an IT service provider, which we've done before, that will kind of empower your MSP to perform the services for you as a proxy. And so like there's workarounds that can be achieved, but it all comes with familiarity with the subject matter. If you're not familiar with what you're looking for in a provider and what they need to, provide to you or the options that are out there, you're going to make an ill-informed decision and things aren't going to turn out necessarily how you want them to.
And IT is not cybersecurity. So that's one thing that your IT company may be not even trying to fool you that they would be able to handle a cyber attack, but you may be thinking, well, they're the IT person. So they're going to, of course, if something happens to us, they're going to take care of it. So that's something that has to be very clearly discussed that, okay, if something happens, can you help us? And then when they say no, and they say, okay, well, then what are we going to do? Now we got to put the plan in place. So
yeah, usually they run into the case where the MSP either doesn't want to grow with them. It's just too much of a burden for them to grow. Can't do it because they don't have the resources available to do it, or they can't do it because they lack the competency and skills. And so being familiar with what you're required to do as an organization obviously sets you up in a good position to determine exactly which one of those categories your external service provider fits into.
Yes, sirree. All right. How can OSCs navigate CMMC detours?
So the most successful methods of approach that I've come across in my workings to help people get around the detours is obviously increasing familiarity with what you have to do. I've talked about it multiple times in this conversation, but it's hard to build out a plan and execute a plan if you don't know necessarily what your plan's intended to do, you need to educate yourself and educate the people that are going to be responsible for defending your environment when the time comes, so that they can successfully do it, right? And then so like ways that we do that, I make a recommendation, and people can miss me with whatever personal thoughts that they have on it, is that there's an entire ecosystem that's been developed for CMMC. And part of that ecosystem is training providers. And part of the courses which they offer are CMMC specified courses, which are designed to increase people's familiarity, the competency with what the requirements are, and it gives you a perspective necessarily to what the assessment methodology is going to be and how the assessors are going to approach you. So if I was going to be in a position to accomplish something, I think I would want that insider knowledge that's provided and the specified knowledge which is provided there. And what we see is organizations will take and they'll make a requirement that the person that's in charge of human resources have some PHR or a senior human resources certificate that's applicable to the role that they have to perform. And we don't have CISSPs and we don't have CISMs lying around, and they aren't a dime a dozen within the DIB, but you have the ability to at least focus on specified knowledge to at least increase the awareness internally in the organization to make informed decisions to proceed forward.
Soundway Consulting has been helping the U.S. government and its business partners address today's most complex cyber challenges for over a decade. Soundway Consulting is a CMMC C3PAO candidate. Let them be your expert guide to CMMC compliance. They will provide a clear path to implementing cybersecurity processes and practices. They have a proven track record, and they warranty their work. Visit soundwayconsulting.com or call their office today.
That's a very, very good point about those courses, because I'm familiar with some of them, and they are very, very good. And you're absolutely right. It is like the insider's guide to, well, what are they going to be looking for when they come in here? Not with everything. They're not going to, tell you everything, but they're going to give you generalities. So that's a great idea. So now we have to figure out, how do the OSCs find out about these courses? That's another thing that needs to be.
So we hope that the reach of shows like yours are effective and people see the things that need to get out there to combat misinformation, or just to provide clearer information, or just non-solicited pathway forward, pointers, and anything we can do to nudge each other along the way. I think this is a group effort, and there's a lot of dissension that comes about with what's beneficial and what's not. From my perspective, and I think a lot of people share this perspective, is that you don't have a CISSP, you don't have a CISM, but it's not just as good, and I'm not going to discredit either one of those certifications, but for what it's meant to accomplish in taking people that aren't familiar at all to at least some level of familiarity so they can make informed decisions, I don't see where the risk reward is too great to avoid doing it.
Absolutely. All right. So when should OSCs start their compliance journey? This is a big topic, because everything isn't all nailed down exactly. They want to say, well, we're going to wait. We're going to wait. Go ahead. You answer this question.
So now, right? Like why have you not already is one way that we can approach it. But we just talked about it. Like, they don't know. And so it's not for lack of effort on certain people's parts to get the word out there. There hasn't been clear, definitive guidance that's been given at any point in time. There's always some kind of way to find contradictory items or elements within the information that's been provided to us. But the truth is that if you look, and a majority of the people which I deal with that didn't know this exists, when you look into their contracts and when you talk to them about what they do, it's clear as day. But you have to get that exposure to the people. So using vessels like yourself, for people like me, hopefully, so that I don't have to have this conversation on a one-on-one basis 1,000 times to get the point across.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make these video series, was when somebody finds out in their contract, what is this CMMC? And they go to Google and they go to YouTube and they start typing it in, that some of these videos will come up, and there's such a broad variety of topics that they can kind of hone in on something that they're really trying to learn. So I'm hoping that these videos definitely help, because we need these contractors to stay in business, and we need them to be supporting our government, and we need to make it as easy as possible. And I think sometimes people like to talk about, oh, it's so complex, it's going to be so difficult for them and everything. It's like, well, stop saying that. Let's try to find a way that we can, help them, like simplify it, instead of, sometimes I think, technical people like to talk technical and make things even more complicated. And the non-technical people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So that doesn't help anything.
My grandfather used to tell me something that stuck with me to this day. There's people that make solutions and there's people that make excuses. Which one do you want to be?
That is I love that. That's awesome. That's a great saying, because it's true. It is true, so you can be part of the problem or part of the solution here. So let's all be part of the solution and help everybody.
Yeah, the program's progressing and it's making improvements. I don't think anybody expected it to be flawless from the initiation. You expect it to grow, just like every other regulatory requirement that we've seen come across in the history of time. It's not perfect and it's not flawless out the gate, but at least they're making progress to get it better, and they're addressing the things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, because they do need to be addressed. That's for sure. All right. So before we go, thank you so much, first of all, for your time and all your expertise. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, thank you for this. It's great. I hope to do it again soon.
Yes, definitely. I would love to have you back on.
Thanks.
All right, Jason. Well, thank you for your time and talent and everything else. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we hope to see you on the next episode of 123 CMMC. Take care. Till then. Bye-bye.
Yeah.